I believe I can fly.
Everybody, and welcome back to my channel. As you can see, I'm a little comfy today, a lot comfy. I woke up at about 6:45 to wake up my kids and to make breakfast because of online schooling. Excuse my closet. But today I thought I'd do an oatmeal mukbang with you. As you can see, I got some leftover oatmeal that I made probably yesterday, and I just added some milk and I mushed up some bananas, and I put a little bit of honey with the bananas as I mushed it up, and I put some cacao. I put some cacao in it. I don't know if you can see it. Some blueberries, some cinnamon. And it tastes great. I'm gonna work out in a little bit, so I just want to get something in my stomach. I like to get something in my stomach probably an hour before because I have a dentist appointment later too. And of course I've been trying to eat healthier. I've been trying to eat healthier. And it's stuff to help me gain muscle. Actually, not gain muscle. I'm a pretty stocky girl, but you know, just to grow my muscles better, I guess. And I have some chia seed water. So in today's video, I kind of wanted to talk about how I've been there you go. Okay. So I had to change my direction a little bit. This is really good, by the way. It's an easy breakfast. And it has everything you need to have energy to work out, including the banana. So for this segment, I kind of wanted to take time to talk about something I've been working on since quarantine has started and how it's gotten much better in my eyes. I know I had my daughter at 20. So I was 19 when I got pregnant. I turned 20 and I had her before my 21st birthday. So she celebrated with me. And growing up, I had a great childhood. Don't get me wrong. I had a family that loved me. I had very supportive family members. My mom was very hardworking. I was privileged, to say the least. Very privileged. I live in a really nice house. Got whatever I wanted. I had no brothers or sisters. So I didn't have to worry about any of that. About sharing any of that. I did have my two cousins that I consider my brother and sister growing up because we always played together. And I'm Filipino, so it takes a village to raise a baby. So growing up, I had a lot of different role models in my life to raise me. So my mom never got to have her structure with me. My mom was a great mom. I think every mother giving their child life is a great mom, given the circumstances, whatever anybody may be in. But for me in particular, my mom is a great mom. And, you know, my mom was really young when she had me. She had me at 16. So her and my dad were like childhood sweethearts. And she had to go over a lot of obstacles just to where she's at today. She works frontline with COVID. She's a registered nurse, and I'm proud to call her my mom because she really is the real superhero today. And I think all the nurses working right now need that recognition because they're working frontline with this pandemic, and we should all be grateful that they strive long hours. So if you see a nurse, tell her thank you because it's not easy, especially right now. I'm Filipino, so it takes a village to raise a baby. So my grandparents raised me, my aunt raised me, and then I would go to my mamang's house, rest in peace. My mamang would raise me, my auntie Thelma would raise me, my other aunties would raise me, my uncles would raise me. So it's like 4 or 5 different adults living in that house, like all having a hand in raising me and my cousins And, you know, growing up, I'm sure there's that generation cycle where I'm coming to find with me going to therapy myself that the way you nurture your kids is generational, kind of. And it's up to you whether or not you want to break that, which I wanted to break that. I just didn't know how. I was raised by my uncles and aunties as well. I never had like one particular person, although I know the normalcy should be like a mom and dad raising you. My dad was a knucklehead, still is a knucklehead, but he's in prison for life, so I couldn't really go to him. He's still a child himself. When I talk to him, I love my dad because he's also the reason I'm here is because of him as well. But if you think about it, moms give you life. I never had any set rules for me. Although my mom would try to have rules for me, it would always be over. My grandparents always, I felt, seeing it now as an adult, would override her authority. Because of course, when you're living with your parents, they have a different set of rules for you. And trust me, I'm nowhere near where I want to be today. Am I proud of the accomplishments that I have? Yes. Am I fortunate enough to be living somewhat on my own? I have a great guy that I'm with. His name's Miguel. You guys have seen him in my last videos. He's very supportive, and thankfully I have the opportunity to have my own space and raise my kids the way I want. And trust me, I'm not a saint. I've done my share of damage, and I've done my share of not being the greatest mom around, and to this day I'm still working on it. I never grew up with structure. I think there are times or periods of time where I remember having structure, but my grandparents always, they would overrule that. And in Filipino culture, I feel like you always have to respect your elders, so what they say goes. You can't really argue with it. And my mom growing up, she couldn't really have a say in stuff because whatever my grandma said went. Whatever my grandpa said went. And I think that's just culturally. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I perceive it. And my mamang, she was born in the 20s, so all I know is if you have to learn to cook when you're 7 and take care of your siblings, then I don't know how much of a childhood you really have. And my grandma, when she was younger, she was the third born out of 15 kids. So I'm sure she didn't really have time to play, because when she was 7 or 8, she's already taking care of another baby. And when she's 9 or 10, she's already taking care of 2 other babies. And when she was 10, the list goes on. She was third out of 15, so she had to pretty much be a second mom to 12 other kids. And you don't really have time to be a kid when you have to be a kid mom, So what I'm trying to say is that's that generation that I'm talking about. So my grandma, my mamang, tried her best with my grandma. Realistically, she was 15 years apart or something like that from my grandma. So that's basically like an older sister. My grandma had my mom and my auntie Jamie. And coming from someone who was more like a sister to you, I don't know how they were, so I don't want to speak on it. My grandma, I'm not going to say is not affectionate. She was more affectionate with me, I feel, compared to what my mom and my auntie Jamie tell me. But I think that's just how grandparents evolve in a way after their kids have kids. And I feel like my mom, I feel like she got a lot of support going to school. But from what she tells me, I just hear a lot that my grandparents were very stern. They were supportive nonetheless, but they were stern. My grandpa was in the Navy, so he was deployed a lot. My grandma, she was a nurse and she had to work night shifts. So it was my mamang, my auntie Jamie, and my mom. And whenever, working the night shift is really exasperating. Like, I'm sure I've never worked night shifts like my mom or my grandma, but just the way I see them come home, I know it's exhausting. So whenever my grandma would come home, she had her regimen. From what I understand, she came home, ate, slept, went back to work, came home, ate, slept, went back to work. She was the disciplinarian, and so was my grandpa. So when you have two disciplinarians, there's not much affection that goes with raising your kids, I'm guessing. My mom was more of the nurturing one, from what they tell me. And my mama would tell them, hey, just take it, just listen. But again, that's the generation. And my grandma, I don't know if she got a lot of hugs when she was younger, but my grandma's a bull, and so is my mom. So moving forward, long story short, my mom got pregnant at 16. She still graduated with honors. She excelled in school. She worked her ass off to get to where she is today, to give me a great life, which she did. And financially, I got whatever I wanted. I was spoiled. I'm still spoiled. And whatever I wanted, I got it because my mom was financially stable. And this video isn't to bash on my mom, and it's not to bash on other people's parenting at all. I'm merely giving you my experience with how my parenting has evolved with my kids, and how I would, I'm challenging that generational norm. And I feel like, so growing up, my grandparents were very nurturing. I rarely heard the word no, and when I did, you better steer clear because I'm going to throw a fat ass tantrum. And I was throwing tantrums till I'm not going to lie to you, I was throwing tantrums till I was like 23, 24. Because that's around 25, 26. Okay, I'm about to turn 29, so it wasn't that long ago that I stopped throwing tantrums. But growing up, like I said, my grandparents bought me whatever I wanted. My mom bought me whatever I wanted. And I never heard the word no. They would buy me McDonald's, Taco Bell. I had it made in the shade. And they would support me. But I feel like since I got whatever I wanted, I was never really given that opportunity, or I was never given that stability to where when you start something, you follow through with it. I mean, when I was younger, I think I was a little more diligent about it because I was younger. I'm a sponge. And my mom was very affectionate with me from what I remember until a certain age. And the affection it became minimal. And I don't remember getting hugged as much. And, she was working really hard, so I don't blame her. So her affection was shown from like buying me everything, which was great. But as an adult now, I can see how that kind of affected my emotional stability. I've come a long way with my mental health. I mean, I don't want to disclose everything that I go through with my mental health, but it is a lot under control now. And I've really come a long way. And I'm really proud of myself. Although I still make mistakes, I can't dwell on it. And I give myself a lot of credit for how I deal with things now, not just pertaining to my kids, but just with life and with things in general, with people, my relationship, my parents, my family, and just everyday problems. I feel like the generation stuck with me. So I'm gonna go on. I have like a little list that I wanted to. How I started out as a parent when Azaria was born, I was very new to it, and of course I didn't have the stability given to me. I was a big kid. I'm still an adult child. And when she was born, I just remember to me, she was a doll. Not that I would throw her around, but I would have fun with her, like I would draw unibrows on her, or like have her do funny videos with me. Nothing to where she was in danger, but to where I was just like, oh, like I finally have my own baby. And I loved her nonetheless, but also too, I was pretty impatient. I lived with my grandparents, so they helped me a lot, to the point where I would have a lot of breaks. Like, it was, don't get me wrong, I was in the picture a lot and I always took care of her, but I had a lot of help. My mom, my grandpa, my grandma, my stepdad, and you know, I had my extended family. If I didn't have them, if they were busy doing something, I had my Auntie Thelma, and I had my cousin, and I had my Auntie Jamie, my mom's sister, of course. And I was privileged to be born into a family that was very supportive, like I said. And as Azaria got a little older, before I had met Miguel, she was my friend. Like, from the ages of 1 to 3 and 4, she was my friend. I didn't see her as my daughter. I used to call her my little homegirl, which to me isn't okay now. I didn't have the structure as a parent. And, I was given a lot of junk food when I was younger, so her and I would eat a lot of junk food. I would make food that wasn't so healthy, and I think I was also depressed because, depression is showed in different forms, so in a way I was just careless. And I fed her whatever. It wasn't the healthiest choices. I was a different person at the time. And, I was trying to numb myself from everything that was going on because her dad left. Like, right after I gave birth to her, he basically cut the cord and he was like, deuces. But him and I were really young too. And we had a very toxic relationship. So I made the adult choice of coming back home because I knew I didn't want to raise her in that environment. The ways I would try to solve my problems with her as a baby, I never communicated with her. I was raised just getting yelled at. If I did something wrong, I wasn't really explained why and what I did was wrong. I could remember, I'm not going to discredit my mom, but I remember certain times when I was explained a little bit and she would kind of go into it. But my mom, she wasn't a big communicator. She would yell a lot. And, I can't blame her because she didn't know how else to discipline me. I got spanked, and at one point I was tired of getting spanked, so I fought back, which wasn't okay. But, after a while of living a life where you're getting yelled at, not constantly, to the point where it was mentally abusive. I went through some things as a kid that I don't wish to talk about either. But also, too, I had a lot of resentment. And there were times I felt like it really wasn't fair, but I chose to stick through it because it's my mom and I love her. And my mom has unconditional love for me. So my mom wasn't a big communicator. Like I said, she wouldn't really go into detail when I would do something wrong, why this wasn't right, why if I keep repeating these certain actions, it was going to hurt me in the long run. Just your basic communication, what people like to call or refer to as white people stuff, which there's no such thing as white people stuff. There's no such thing as black people stuff. There's no such thing as, oh, that's Asian, that's an Asian way, or that's so Asian. It's just about how you go about things and what you would like to provide mentally and emotionally for your kid, which I don't feel like I was provided a lot of emotional stability. And like I said, that again goes with the generation thing. I would spank, and I was very impatient. Like I said, if she was doing something wrong, I would resort to yelling too. And when I talk about it, I feel really sad because those are detrimental years that you really have to focus on their psychological well-being. Like, that's when you start and that's when you nurture. But I didn't know how to be. I was affectionate, but I didn't know how to have patience with things that really involved talking. I always thought that talking was stupid, and I always thought that, like, No, your kids aren't going to listen to you if you talk. You have to let them know who's boss. And you can't be your kid's friend and then expect them to listen to you, which is what I'm learning now. And so I would be her friend and we would have fun together. I didn't have any responsibility. I had my family supporting me still. And I mean, they still support me now, but I have a better grasp, and I have my Cosmo license, so I'm a hairstylist, and that's one of my biggest accomplishments too. So I was just a big yeller as well. I would yell. So I didn't communicate anything. If she did something wrong, it was either a palot, which means spank, or I would yell. And there was never that middle where I would explain to her what she was getting yelled at. Like, I understand yelling, but not over excessively, which I feel like most of the time when she did something wrong, I would resort to yelling because I didn't know how else to communicate. That was the way I was raised, and that's the way I was going to raise her because that was all I knew. My parenting is really similar to when I was younger because my mom didn't explain anything to me. If I got in trouble, I was scared shitless because in my head, I'm like, fuck, now I'm going to get yelled at, or I'm going to get spanked or pinched, or like, just, I think the worst was getting yelled at because my mom, she looked really scary when she would yell at me. And I would literally be scared, but luckily for me, I had my grandparents there who would stop her majority of the time, which would make her even more angry. And it would make me angry too. Like, I'm trying to discipline my kid, and although it's not the right way, I get really mad. I would be really mad, and I do get mad when things that I try to do with my child as far as disciplinary actions, I hate when they get interfered with because it's my kid and I'm trying to raise her a certain way, and I don't want to. So for me, when that kept happening, I would run to my grandparents because I knew that they were going to stop her, and that wasn't a good practice that was happening with me because to this day, my grandparents, I still run to them when I feel helpless. And that's something I've been over the years weaning off of. And they're getting older. They want to go back to the Philippines already. So you can only understand like how much it pains them still when I go to them with my problems. So I really try not to go to them. I mean, I still do because I love them and I know they love me. But they want to live their life, you know? The generation pattern that I notice that has followed me into adulthood is you don't communicate with your kid. You resort to spanking if things are really bad. Not even really bad, but to the point where if you want to get a message across, you're going to get palot. And, you know, a generation pattern I also see is that, you know, my mom, I love hugging my mom, but she doesn't really like hugging me. And my grandma hugs me when it's a very emotional state, when the problem is intense, and when, you know, my grandma, I've been learning to say I love you more just for no reason. Just like, hey, I love you. Hey, just checking up on you to say that I love you. Because I've experienced some things in 2020 where, you know, when someone's gone, you're not going to get that time back. And you really need to be grateful for what you do have now, who you have now. Because you know when you're born, but you don't know when your time is up. We lost some people last year. 2 people. You know, we're never going to see those people again. They're in another life. They didn't pass away. They're just in another life. You have to say I love you every single day to the people you love. You know, you just need to show gratitude in ways to where you know that you're not going to get anything back from it. You're being kind and you're showing love, because having expressions and seeing the warmth in people's faces is the best you can get back. Having people know that you love them. And I didn't get that a lot. I mean, my mom would tell me, I love you. But I remember telling her a lot that I loved her when I was a kid. And there were moments now that I think about it. I remember we used to shower together when I was 5 to 6 and 7, I think. And I would always remember she would give me my towel and I would always say, Mom, I love you. And I don't know if it was discomfort in her face, but it was never like, oh, I love you too. It was just like, I love you too. And she said it. I'm not going to knock it because she said it back to me. But, it's not the way that I tell my kids. And, sometimes I tell my kids, I love you just for no reason. Or I tell them, hey, you're special to me. Or, hey, I'm really grateful that you're here. Just little things like that to kind of remind your kids that they're important and, they're an individual in your life that really, really matters. Just giving them that validation like, hey, you're super special to me. I decided I want to break that generation cycle, and I remember it specifically. I just yelled at Azaria, and I spanked her because she wasn't doing well in school, or at least she had some behavioral issues, which every kid runs into. But it was happening repeatedly, and I didn't understand because it was like the same punishment. I would palo her, I would yell on our way home, I would palo her, and after that, I would talk to her, and I really expected her to hug me after. Like, I would hug her, and I would try to comfort her. So this is the water, but I'm hugging her, right? And I'm saying, hey, just behave, okay? Just behave. And she's like this. Like, arms down. Just like, oh shit, what do I do? And it really hurt me because I was like, you don't want to hug mommy? And she was just like, yeah. And she would like give me this flaily hug. And it really broke my heart because that was happening often. And she was distancing herself from me, and she couldn't talk to me about anything. And neither could my stepdaughter. Like, she was very distant from me, and I felt like our relationship had grown really estranged, and it made me really sad because my kids were scared of me and I was scared of my mom. So it was like history repeating itself, and I always told myself, I'm never gonna be a parent like that. I'm never gonna have my kids be scared of me. I'm gonna be that fun mom, which now I'm not gonna say I'm not fun, but you can't be both. I always tell my kids, I'm not your friend. I'm your mother. Secondly, I'm your mentor. And thirdly, I could be friendly at times, but I will never be your friend. I'm your mom. And that's something I've always told them. I can be friendly, but I will never be your friend. I am here to mother you. I'm here to love you, and I'm here to guide you and show you right from wrong. And if you're going to be a great mother one day, I have to build you up to be a great person all around. And I wanted to break that. I noticed that I was just repeating history with my kids, and I didn't want to be that mom. I didn't want them to be emotionally stable, and I didn't want to give them the wrong idea of how you need to be with your kids. Not the wrong idea, but I definitely didn't want them, theoretically speaking, to have kids, and their kids are scared of them, and I just didn't want that for myself. I don't want that. It's not for me. I feel like what I'm doing now, and I'll go into depth about it, is benefiting my kids and myself and my partner, because communication, like I said, was scarce. It didn't happen. It rarely happened where they would communicate. And that goes for my aunties and uncles too. They don't know how to communicate, and they were born in that generation to where, and into a generation to where, like, your mom and dad were your bosses. Yes, they're your mom and dad, but whatever they say goes. There was no explanation. There was no reason why. There was no understanding of why this came about to be this. But it's the way it was. It's because it's the I said so. That's what I always hear. Because I said so. Don't do as I say. Don't do as I do. Do as I say type stuff. Which isn't fair. Because how can you expect your child to do what you say when you're doing the exact opposite, you know? And this is just pertaining to me. This is, like I said, if any of you are taking this as a personal attack, then maybe you need to reanalyze some stuff. But this video is just about how changing my way of parenting has worked out for Melina. I'm not preaching to anybody about, oh, you should do this, you should do that. I'm really just going into detail about how me as a mother and how I used to mother before really changed me as a person and a parent and a partner and a daughter and a granddaughter and a niece, you know? So what I feel like it's benefiting me, although it takes a lot of talking, and I'm grateful for it. My kids trust me. If something's bothering them, then they have the freedom to tell me. They can freely come up to me and say, hey, may I please talk to you? Hey, you know, I really didn't like when this happened, or I would like to assert to you that when you said this, it didn't really make me feel comfortable. And I love that, because I could never go up to my mom and tell her how I felt. And even if I did, not the way my kids do it, I would get scolded, or she would say, I was never validated for my feelings. It was more like, well, if you did this, this wouldn't have happened. You know, it was never detailed to where my mom really spoke to me about why things were the way they were, or why I was getting in trouble, or why this was wrong. Oh, and also too, I was very scared to do homework with my mom. I dreaded doing homework with my mom, to the point I didn't want to do homework or show her my tests, because like I said, my mom was an honor roll student, and my mom's very intelligent. She's like the smartest person I know. And you know, when I would do homework with her, I would get really scared, and the way I'm saying it, or the way it's being annotated right now, I didn't trust her, because I knew I was going to get yelled at. I knew if I didn't get an answer right, I was going to get spanked or pinched, and I wasn't allowed the freedom to make mistakes. Although I did make a lot of mistakes, I got consequences for it. And I would cry a lot when doing homework with her, and I hated it because I just felt stupid, and I felt like I can do nothing right, and I just hated homework. And you know, I think that's why I really loathe doing homework today, because it brings back that trauma for me where homework was just not it for me. I hated doing homework, especially with my mom, because I just knew it was a death sentence. So when quarantine happened, we're in this pandemic. It happened abruptly, and we were not prepared for it. You know, you're stuck in the house with your kids and with your partner. The first couple months we're literally quarantined, and Miguel, he had a schedule after they lifted it a little bit, because he had to go back to work. He's an essential worker. Grateful for him. And you know, I was just yelling a lot, especially I didn't have my mental health really intact just yet. It's stabilized now, but having a mental health issue and raising kids, it doesn't go hand in hand. So I tried to get a grasp on it the best way I could, and my relationship really isn't to where it wasn't where it was at today. And trust me, it's taken Miguel and I a very, 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 very long time to get where we are today, to where communication is key. It really is. Communication is key. So I would yell a lot. I didn't explain to them why they were getting yelled at. And I was just, you know, I would hide from them, because it came to a point where I hated motherhood. I didn't hate being a mother, but motherhood and I just were not friends. I hated certain parts of it, and I just wasn't patient. And my kids were scared of me, so that made me even more angry, because you know, you want your kids to love you and trust you, and that wasn't happening. So on top of me yelling, I didn't understand why they didn't trust me. So there was no like, hey, Melina, maybe it's because you're doing this. I'm also really thankful for my therapist, because my therapist also brings me to an understanding of a lot of things that I never comprehended before. And when people would try to talk to me about, oh, you need to communicate this with your child. Well, did you talk to them about this? And some teachers, even the way I would see them speak to kids, I would think like, oh, that person's such a fucking pansy. Like, just spank them. That's all you have to do. That was my solution, literally, for everything. It brought me to a realization during quarantine that I wanted to be a different mom, and I wanted my kids to trust me, and I wanted to be different. I wanted to evolve as a parent. I didn't want to be I didn't want to not have their trust anymore. I wanted to just progress, and I wanted to show them love that I wasn't shown. I was shown a lot of love, trust me. I was very loved as a child, but it wasn't ideal for raising a well-rounded adult. The tools that I've learned, and I do a lot of reading, and I do on parenting, and it's a lot of trial and error, but something I really do with my kids that has helped me break that generational norm is communication, validation, letting them know what they did wrong, going in depth about why it's going to affect them if they keep having these be repetitive. And I also validate them for what they do right. So I don't instantly go into, hey, you're doing this wrong. Hey, that's not how you do it. Although that was a way that I was handling it for a long time, it wasn't ideal for their confidence or how they're going to mold themselves into adolescence and into being a confident teenager. I know they're still going to get into little obstacles as they get older, but as long as as long as my communication is set with them, they at least know that they can come to me and talk about these insecurities that they might have when they get older. So one thing I like to do is asking how they feel. In any given situation, I love asking how they feel. I've grown to love it, because once you know how they feel, you can kind of put yourself in their shoes. And you can think to yourself, well, they're telling me that they feel really anxious or they feel nervous. So given what happened, whether they were scolded or they were doing something repetitive that you asked them to stop doing several times, I know that once they tell me how they feel, I put myself in their shoes and I think to myself, well, how is what they're feeling? How do you feel about it? So when they tell me, hey, I feel really hurt, I go back to what was being said, what was happening, and I think to myself, well, if they're feeling hurt, you would be hurt too if it was happening. And then I like to go into depth about why it was handled the way it was, given if I yelled at them, if they had a consequence. And I don't resort to yelling. I repeat to them many times, or at least a couple of times, hey, let's not do that. Hey, this is my second time asking you. Hey, when you're doing that, it really hurts my feelings because I feel like you don't hear me, and I feel like you're kind of taking advantage of my patience. So asking how they feel is pretty big for me. Even when I'm frustrated too, I ask them, like, how do you feel right now? And if they tell me I feel mad, I'll tell them, well, since you're feeling this way, I feel pretty mad too. So why don't we take a break from one another and come back within a couple minutes so we can speak to each other better. And allowing them to feel is really big, because I was never allowed to cry for more than 5 minutes. And if I didn't stop crying, then there was going to be consequences. And I used to tell them, hey, stop crying. If you want a reason to cry, I'll give you a reason to cry. And that wasn't cool. That was just really mentally abusive. And I feel really embarrassed for ever saying that. And I tell them, if you feel like crying, then feel like crying. And if I'm really frustrated, I go, hey, I'm really frustrated right now. If you really feel the need to cry, just cry in your room. That way you and I can have space, because I feel like what's going on right now is pretty intense. I also like giving my kids options. And, you know, life is unfair. And if I really need them to do something mandatory, like there's no choice in it, then I'll tell them, hey, I understand you don't want to do this, but I really need you to do this thing right now, like folding their clothes. Okay, I understand you don't want to fold your clothes, but this is just an example. I understand you don't want to fold your clothes, but in order to maintain the cleanliness of your room, we need to fold your clothes. Why don't you give me 12 minutes of folding your clothes by yourself, and once I see that you're making an effort to fold them, I'll help you fold them, since it is a lot of clothes, if it is a lot of clothes. There are times when they don't want to exercise, and my guy and I, we also really like exercising with them, because I was a chubby kid. I mean, I wasn't too chubby, but I was, you know, my mom's not a thin girl. Sorry, I had a phone call. But I was like a healthy kid. I was pretty healthy, you know. And this is me when I was in 2nd grade. Oh. So I wasn't like chubby, but you know, growing up on McDonald's and growing up on Taco Bell and growing up on Mexican food and white rice, especially top ramen, spam, all that good stuff. You know what I'm talking about, that Filipino comfort food, Vienna sausages, adobo, sinigang, nilaga. There's a lot of oil in that, you know? And I really try to tell them the significance of eating healthy. I mean, although we don't eat the healthiest, because I'm the queen of snacking, I tell them you have to maintain a healthy lifestyle, or at least you have to be healthy majority of the time if you want to splurge and still be able to maintain being healthy. And that's something I'm learning too, because I binge eat. I'm a binge eater. I have a food addiction, and I really would run to food for comfort. I've been sober for a while now. I know for sure I haven't drank in 5 years. And drinking for me was a big problem. And that also went into my mental stability. You know, drinking, I was an alcoholic. And also too was just recreational drug use, you know, like smoking weed. That was also for me my medicine. And I don't knock it. I mean, smoking weed it's legal now, and whoever does it, whoever doesn't. I don't see it as a good or bad thing. I just think it's there. But it's not for me anymore, and I'm really glad I got rid of it, because I have a clear head now. And you know, when you smoke weed, you get the munchies, so you know. So I like to give them options. Because if you allow them options, then they feel like they have control. They have somewhat control and somewhat of a say, which you always want your kids to feel like. And whenever I go into giving options or anything that they tell me, I go, hey, your opinion matters. You want to be heard, and you will be heard. I hear you, and I validate you for what you feel and how you want to go about this. You know, I always give them that. I always make sure to add on like what you feel matters. You're your own person, and you're entitled to how you feel. As far as me feeding into how you feel, whether it's negative or you have an attitude, I excuse myself. I tell them, if you want to feel that way, that's great, but I'm in a good mood, and I'm going to excuse myself from the situation, because then I'm going to be in a bad mood. And two people who are in a bad mood, it doesn't mix. When they don't want to do something I also like to do, my daughter, Azaria, she actually told me that she didn't like this yesterday, but I went into depth of why I do it. So when your kids don't want to do something, and when they have an attitude about it, something I really go off of now is don't give it legs. So if they're having an attitude, it's either I excuse myself. Yes? Oh, so when they have attitude, I tell them, like this is just an example. If I give them veggies and they don't want to eat the veggies. Yeah. Forgot we had those. So when they don't want to do something, like eating veggies, which they like eating veggies, I tell them, hey, I'm sorry you don't like eating veggies, but I need you to eat them because they're good for you. And, you know, we've been eating not the best lately, and I just want to make sure you have some vegetables in you because it's going to help your health. It's vegetables are always beneficial unless they're deep fried and from the Delmar Fair. Just kidding. My daughter told me yesterday, hey, mommy, I feel like when you say, I'm sorry you don't, and then she went into what I said, I feel like you're teasing me. And I told her, well, I don't want you to feel like I'm teasing you, but do you know why mommy says that? And she goes, no. And I tell her, what would I used to tell you if you said, oh, I don't want to eat this? I would tell you, oh, I don't care. Whether or not you like it, you're going to eat it. And if you don't, then you're going to get spanked. And I told her, do you remember mommy telling you that? And she would be like, yeah. So I told her, well, I feel like I would rather tell you, hey, I'm sorry you don't want to eat that, but I need you to because I want something in your belly. I find that a lot more nicer than saying, hey, well, I don't care if you want to eat this or not, because whether you want to eat it, you're going to eat it because I said so. And I told her, do you see the difference from how I'm approaching you? I told her, which one would you rather have? And I told her, if you don't want me saying it, that I'm sorry you don't, then I can just stay quiet. And I was like, would you rather me stay quiet? And she told me no, because then I'm going to feel like you're ignoring me. And I told her, I'm telling you that because I'm validating you. And I know that, oh, something I also like to say is, well, if you didn't want to eat this, I'm pretty sure your day would go a lot better right now. And I told her, I say those two things because I want to validate you, and I want to validate you for, I know you, I told her, excuse me. I told her, I want to validate you for how you feel, and I want to let you know, like, hey, I hear you. I know you don't want to eat this, but I need you to eat this because. So the I'm sorry you don't is pretty good, and that kind of allows them the time to feel what they're feeling, and you know, they come back because it's not just used with food. It's used with cleaning your bed. It's used with why you can't play right now. It's used with why you can't watch TV right now, or why we have to do this, you know, things like that. I hear them out and I apologize for when I'm in the wrong. And you know, that's something that my mom didn't really do with me and my grandma. If they were in the wrong, I felt they wouldn't apologize. They would tell me, oh, well, I didn't know. Or, oh, well, maybe you should have told me first. Something like that. Maybe you should have told me that's what you're doing and I would have known. Like, it was never a flat out apology. It was just like, if I did something wrong or if they got something wrong, it was like they didn't really validate me for it or apologize. It was just like, well, you still should have done this. And I'm just like, okay. So I hear them out, and like sometimes I get really impatient. Like yesterday, I yelled twice, and I think I was just having an off day yesterday. And I noticed that I was yelling, and my oldest one, she was saying like, you know, I feel like today I've been getting in trouble when Azaria gets in trouble and you don't know the whole story of what's been going on. So I hugged both of them and I just said, hey, I apologize that I've been yelling so much today. I know that's not a way to communicate. And Karina, I apologize for yelling at you when I don't even have the whole story. So apologizing when I'm wrong is pretty big for me because I want them to know that I do apologize for being wrong. I am in the wrong, and if I'm in the wrong, call me out on it. If I can call you out on you being wrong, you can call me out on being wrong. As long as you do it in a polite way and in a way where you're communicating clearly. Not like, oh, well, you were wrong about this and that's why I didn't like it. No, like, I'm not going to respond to that. You need to speak to me a lot better. I raised you a lot better and you are not that kid. And when I apologize to them, it gives me a sense of clarity because, you know, I'm not perfect and I don't want to make it out to be that I am. I want them to know that as they're growing, I'm growing with you. I I didn't know how to parent. And like I said, I wasn't given the tools really to know how to communicate and how to solve problems with a child. I didn't have the patience for it. I was just very like, it's either I yell at you or spank you. I like hearing them out because they have feelings, they have thoughts, they have opinions. They're gonna grow up to be not kids anymore. So I need to know, and they need to know, that I'm here to hear them out, and I'm here to know when I'm wrong. And just like I call them out, they can call me out too, as long as it's polite. I allow them to cry. That's a big thing for me. Like I said, I was never allowed to cry. Not that I wasn't allowed to cry. My grandpa, I think, let me cry the most because he was like, he's still my favorite person in the world. But I wasn't allowed to cry for a long time with my mom. Like, crying for her was just like, you better stop crying right now. But I was never like allowed to cry just to cry. You know, there's no reason for crying at times, although there are times when I feel that crying is used too much. I could just easily let them know, like, hey, right now is not the time to cry. I understand if you're feeling a certain way, so I will allow you this much time to cry. If it's really to a point where I feel like it's not a situation where they should be crying, I at least give them some time to cry. Because I feel that since I used to be like, hey, well, you can't cry, that's also suppressing like what they're feeling, and they're gonna feel like they have to bottle up everything inside. And you know, once you bottle up everything inside, it's gonna explode. So I'd rather them have them cry a little bit here and there, rather than them bottling it up inside and having it burst. And that's what I did. I wasn't allowed to cry all the time, so I would have it bottled up, and I would just have these huge episodes to where I was hysterical. And that was, you know, I have a lot better control of that now. But that would happen often as an adult, and Miguel had to bear witness that. And like I said, him and I aren't perfect. Yes? Aren't perfect, so I'm barely learning how to control it. I mean, I have a better grasp on it. I do a lot better, and it's becoming more regular for me. But I allow my kids to cry because I want them, if they need to cry, they need to cry. You can't tell somebody to stop crying. And you know, if somebody's crying like 24/7, okay, but when they want to cry, I let them cry. I don't want them to bottle it up, and I want them to let their feelings out a little bit at a time, even if it's like visibly showing, which is crying, being mad, being sad, being angry. You know, I gotta allow them to feel what they feel. That way it's, when they do run into a big situation, they know they're allowed to feel, and they're not gonna let everything from past times, like where they weren't allowed to feel, just combust and just be this huge thing. Okay, so that's also something I really like to do. I love letting them know how they feel matters. So, like, say we're gonna exercise and we have to jog and they don't want to. I go, you know, what you feel matters. What is a way that I can compromise? What is something you could do that would be equivalent to you jogging? Because I need you to move your body. And I tell them, you know, how do you feel about it? Do you want to compromise? Do you need some time to think about it? What can I do right now to have you feel more at ease about working out? Or if they want a toy and I tell them, well, I can only afford to buy this toy for you right now, and they're upset about it, I go, how do you feel about getting a toy that's not the one that you really wanted to get? And they'll either be like, you know, I feel really mad, or I feel really sad. And I'll tell them, like, you know, I'm sorry that you feel sad, but wouldn't it be better than nothing? I mean, if you don't want to buy this toy, I understand, but I'm letting you know right now, I can't buy you that specific toy. Maybe next time, or just allow me to buy this for you, and then once the time comes again, I'll remind you and be like, hey, remember that toy you wanted? Do you want to go get it now? I have enough money, you know? Because toys Toys nowadays are not cheap, especially these mini brands that come like 6, 7 a pop, and they're like this big with toys that big. Okay, they're cute, I get it, but come on now. Very engaged, or most of the time I try to be engaged into what they're telling me, because kids take a lot of pride in what they show you, whether it's big or little. They take a lot of pride and they work so hard on it. And you know, like little things like this, like when my oldest one used to make me things like this, I used to just like say I'm writing down something in my journal and be just like, oh, that's nice. I would not make eye contact, I wouldn't acknowledge it, or I would look and I would go, oh yeah, it looks nice. And you know, they take a lot of pride in stuff that they show you. They're excited. I remember when I used to want to show my mom stuff, I would be so excited and she would acknowledge it, but not to the point where I felt like my hard work was noticed. And I like to be engaged, or if I'm not able to be engaged in speaking with them, I tell them, hey, I can't really give you my full undivided attention right now, so let me do this and I will come to you and I'll let you know when I'm engaged, because I want to be in that moment with you. I don't want to be distracted. I want to give you that time. And it works, because I would rather do what I need to do if it's that important or it needs to get done, rather than giving them half-assed attention and not making them feel as important, or what they're doing or showing me isn't important. So when they show me little things, I just go, wow, how did you do that? Or how did you think of that? Or you're so talented. And you know, my kids are talented. They have a dollhouse and half of their stuff in that dollhouse is DIY. So my kids got it going on. They're really great kids. They're very self-competent, and I'm so glad that, you know, Miguel and I have helped each other grow as parents. And like I said, we're not perfect. We're still learning, and we've put through our fair share of not a really good environment, but I'm really glad where we're at today. When they take pride in stuff, I let them know that what they did was really cool, because it is really cool. I don't know a lot of kids who are not on a tablet nowadays who really still play with dolls, or who still go outside or want to do stuff outside. Most of the kids now that I see are playing games and on a tablet, or a lot of kids my kids' age, like my youngest one, a lot of kids have phones, which I don't really get. I understand if you need a phone, but that's just my opinion. I just don't understand the whole phone thing. Like, I know that there are situations where some kids don't see their parents as much, and maybe they're bought a phone, but still, I just don't agree personally for my kids to have a phone that young. There's too many perverts in the world, and you gotta make sure you see what they're doing. And the last one I love to use is expressing myself to them as well. I express myself to them, like if I'm having a hard day, I express to them, hey, I may be mad right now in this moment, but give me some time to think about what's happening. And it doesn't even have to be a situation with them. And say I'm like having a dispute with Miguel, or say that I had an argument with my mom, or things aren't going well with my aunt, or I was just given some bad news just in general. I let them know, hey, right now I just feel really sad, so it's only for the moment, but if you allow me this time, or if just give me this time right now to feel what I'm feeling, and this moment will pass, but I don't want to interact with you while I'm feeling like this, because I don't want my emotions to be misdirected. And they understand when I speak to them like that. I'm very articulate when it comes to my kids, because I want them to be articulate. And I like expressing myself too, because it helps me not just with my kids, but with my partner. Before I didn't like feeling emotion, and I was very closed off to it, because like I said, as a kid, I didn't have any emotional stability. And like I said, mental health also has a lot to do with it. So now I'm able to freely express myself without feeling like I'm losing, or that someone else is dominating me if I don't feel vulnerable. I mean, expressing how you feel is an act of vulnerability, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to feel weak, which is exactly how I would feel when I would express myself. I would feel weak. And being raised by 2 alpha females, you're not allowed to be weak. And if they see any sign of weakness, which is crying or expressing how you feel, that's a no-no. My mom and my grandma are very strong, independent, intelligent women. And I love them for that. Although I wish I was taught more that what I was feeling was okay, you know? I didn't have much of a say of when I was younger to feel what I felt. But now as an adult, I'm telling myself, if I don't express how I feel, I can't expect people to mind read and try to work out a situation that's more ideal rather than being closed off and stonewalling people and just expecting them to know how I feel. How am I supposed to know how you feel if you don't tell me? How are you supposed to know how I feel if I don't tell you? And I can only control how I react. I can't control somebody else's reaction. I can only control the way I'm going to react. So when I tell my kids, hey, I feel this way, that's me controlling how I react. And say I was frustrated, and this has happened before, where I'm frustrated and I'm doing something with them and I lash out, like maybe it'll be a lot or a little bit, but I catch myself now because I don't let it happen often. I catch myself now and I tell them, this is misdirected anger or this is misdirected frustration. I don't mean to be talking to you like this. It's just this, like something happened and I think I need to take 5 minutes to let myself feel it. And I will come back and we'll have a better day or we'll have a better interaction. So that also too is great for my kids because I don't want them to feel like just because I'm having a bad day, it's because of them. I want them to know that what I'm experiencing in that moment is because of this. So I'm feeling this way. So give me some time so I can allow myself to feel this way. And I can be in a better mood. That way we're all in a good mood. Because I don't want my bad mood to project into your day, And, those are the tools that I really find myself using with them. There's a lot more tools that I use that I've learned about and I've familiarized myself with. But I'm just really proud to say that I'm glad that I'm breaking that generational norm and I'm breaking that cultural, I don't know if it's cultural, but I'm glad that I'm breaking it. And, it's really working for me. And I know this is not really utilized nowadays. I know everybody has their different way of parenting, but communicating with my kids and letting them feel and, what everybody thinks is stupid, it's working for me and it's working for my kids. And all I can hope for is for them to, use this with their kids if they have kids one day, or use it with people. And it's all practice. Sometimes I still do feel that the way I'm doing it is kind of dumb. Sometimes I think like, oh, this shit's not working. This shit is so stupid. Especially when I'm having kind of an off day with them. I try to remind them and I try to apologize for the way I react sometimes because I know the way I react is still kind of old habits. But I'm just very proud of how far that Miguel and I both have come as parents. And although we still have some eggs in our basket at times, what couple doesn't? What parents don't? And, quarantine, I'm very grateful because it's really allowed me to venture off into ways that I can evolve with my parenting. And, I love my kids and I can only hope that one day they'll realize, hey, I'm really glad that they did this with me. And I'm really glad that they practiced this with me because your kids are people. Like, yeah, they're your kids, but they're people. And they're not going to be kids forever. And you want them to be well-rounded, confident adults, allowed to feel, allowed to express themselves. Like, you want to validate for them for that kind of stuff because they're going to grow up to be adults one day. And, it's really hard to teach yourself these things when you're an adult, and I'm telling you that firsthand. I have to reteach myself everything, emotional stability, all that good stuff. But this video is pretty long. I can only hope that you guys watch at least 2 minutes of it. At least that's what I'm ranked. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Thanks for joining me. I didn't really eat. I mean, I ate some, but I gotta work out now because I have an appointment at 1, so I better get down there. Like and subscribe if you like this content. I know that most of my videos aren't the best just yet. So thanks for joining me. Bye.